rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Date, 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ died on the cross and 3 days later was raised from the dead. We are now on the brink of the most pivotal prophetic fulfillment since that great event. Indicators are everywhere that moves are being made toward finally reaching a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis. When this agreement is achieved, the Bible prophesies that the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus will begin. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated a few years ago that he believed he would be the prime minister that would finally conclude an agreement with the Palestinians. It looks like we may soon see if his prediction comes to pass. Well, I can't tell you how momentous this is. I mean, the news is packed with stories, developments, secret negotiations. A lot of things are happening. We're going to look at those things today. A lot of things are moving right now, pushing toward this 2,500-year-old prophecy. You know, I never cease to be amazed. I've been dealing with prophecy for 50 years, but I haven't got used to it. I never cease to be amazed at how incredible and how accurately these prophecies come to pass. It's just like I've been teaching for many years now about this coming Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement and how that it will trigger the final 7 years to Armageddon. And yet when I see the pieces coming together, it's just like almost magic. And you just watch it all happen. It's amazing. I had a very similar experience to what I'm experiencing right now. Back in 1989, I began to teach in 1968 that the Berlin Wall would come down, the two Germanys would be reunited. Well, I put it in my book, A Message for the President, my first book, published in 1986, that the Berlin Wall was going to come down, the two Germanys would be reunited, and that would be the beginning of the new world order. 3 years later, in 1989, events begin to build towards the falling of the Berlin Wall, just like they're doing right now toward this Middle East peace agreement. George W. Bush called for the tearing down of the wall. President Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, if you're for democracy like you say you are, tear down this wall. Well, every time I would hear those things, I'd think, oh my goodness, I've been teaching this for 21 years and it looks like it's upon us now, but it didn't happen quite yet. Months went on, but everything was pushing. All events were pushing toward it. And then all of a sudden on that fateful day, that prophetic day, I should say, November 9, 1989, the news ricocheted around the world. The Berlin Wall had been breached. People were pouring through. The gates have now been opened at Checkpoint Charlie, and they're coming in by the hundreds and thousands into West Germany. And I'll never forget that moment. It was almost surreal, to tell you the truth. But yet I was fascinated. Well, my phone started ringing off the hook. People who had read my book. How did you know this? Where is this the Bible? What does this mean? What's going to happen next? Those were the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, there's more evidence for what I'm telling you about the present developments than there were back there before the fall of the Berlin Wall, even though I saw it clearly and it did come to pass exactly as it appeared in the prophecies of the Bible. Yet the evidence is so much more prominent about this event that you and I are facing. I am talking about when it comes to pass, it will be the greatest prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years. And we've had some great fulfillments. The rebirth of the nation of Israel. This one is going to be more impacting because this is the one with a timeline attached. When this happens, 7 years to the second coming of Jesus to this earth. Wow. How big is that? 7 years to the battle of Armageddon. It is the triggering of God's end time timeline. Now, there's going to be a lot of things happen during that final 7 years. It is going to be a tremendous event. Before I go ahead with some of the news that's breaking about all this so you can see the veracity of what I'm saying to you, I do want to announce to you that this coming weekend on Saturday, June the 25th at 7 p.m., I will be in Simsbury, Connecticut. I'll be teaching on America's God-given destiny. If Americans ever need to know this, we need to know it right now. So the meeting is Saturday, June 25th, 7 p.m. And then that particular meeting is going to be held at the Ethel Walker School Chapel, 230 Bushy Hill Road in Simsbury, Connecticut. The next morning on Sunday, June the 26th, I will be speaking at 10 a.m. on breaking prophetic fulfillments, what's happening right now. And that meeting is going to be held at the Life United Pentecostal Church, 507 Hop Meadow Street in Simsbury, Connecticut. So that's going to be a great prophecy conference Saturday night, Sunday. And by the way, at the Breaking Prophetic Fulfillments, we will have a time of open questions and answers. I will be taking your questions from the floor, unfiltered, unscreened, so that you can ask what you would like to ask. It's going to be a great time. So that's Saturday evening and Sunday morning. Saturday evening, 7 o'clock, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. I hope you can be with us. And don't forget, now the locations are going to be different location on Saturday than there will be on Sunday. On Sunday, it will be held at the local church there. So if you're out in that area, any place close, we have people driving all the time from 3, 4, 5 hours away. So we would love to have you. Anyway, that's this coming Saturday and Sunday. Oh yeah, one more thing I've got to tell you. The emergency fund. Partners, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, you have overwhelmed me with your generosity and your kindness. We've achieved our goal. And what an important thing it is. They're going to start installing the first of the air conditioners later on this week. Thank you so much. That's all I can tell you is we appreciate it. It means so much to us here at Endtime Ministries. It was an absolute necessity, and it was a financial pinch we found ourselves in, but you came to the rescue. All I can say to all of you that contributed to it, thank you very much. We appreciate it so much, and what a help it is to us. And we believe because we've been able to take the money that was designated for repair, and we have a friend who's in the heating and air conditioning business, and he sat down with us to show us we could take the same money and just put new units in place of the old 18-year units that were badly damaged. And so we're going to be able to achieve that. We believe that we will have the units that we need all the way to the rapture. We believe that we will be able to heat and cool our building efficiently, and it's all because of you. So give yourselves a hand out there. If I had applause music, we would play it for you right now. But anyway, thank you so much. And I just can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Of course, summer's the time. Sometimes when donations to ministries go down a little bit, people are spending their money on vacations and different things. And sometimes the work of God is neglected a little bit. But let me tell you, in 1 week's time, you came through and contributed $54,710, the amount of our deductible, so that we were able to go straight forward and such a critical time. It's hot here in Texas right now, so thank you very much. You can tell I'm very thankful. I keep going over it, but we appreciate it so very much. And we also appreciate your faithful monthly ongoing donations that allow us to keep doing everything we're doing on an ongoing basis. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all I can say. Now, we're back to our subject. I've been watching the news very closely because there are so many articles appearing right now. This one particular article appeared, is entitled, "Is Netanyahu Finally Ready to Make Moves of Historic Dimensions?" This article was published in the Jerusalem Post on the 17th, so about 3 days or so ago. Now, I'm not going to read the entire article, but I do want to pick things out to comment on. Now, you might know that about a month ago, Netanyahu was attempting to enlarge his coalition because he had been ruling with a majority of one. That means if one dissenting member of the Israeli Knesset got upset with him over something, decided to vote against him, it would be a no confidence vote and his government would be toppled, or else he would have to call new elections. Well, he was negotiating, first of all, with Isaac Herzog of the Labor Party, but Herzog apparently demanded more than Netanyahu was willing to give. So he then turned to Avigdor Lieberman, and they reached a coalition agreement. That brought another 6 seats into the coalition, so now he has a majority of 7 instead of 1. That gives him a lot more room of maneuverability, and also it's pretty common in Israel to, it'd be sort of like having a Republican majority of 4 or 5 seats in the House or 4 or 5 seats in the Senate. You can usually get your legislation passed if you're able to do that, if you have that kind of majority. Well, that's about what Netanyahu is dealing with right now. And I want you to hear some of the things that this article says. Avigdor Lieberman's swearing in as Israel's new defense minister in late May. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the hitherto hawkish Israel Beitenu leader took pains to show the world just how dedicated they are to Middle East peacemaking and a 2-state solution with the Palestinians. Now, I want to pause right there because many people in Israel are adamantly opposed to the 2-state solution, including the party that was the main coalition party with Netanyahu prior to Lieberman coming on board. Consequently, Netanyahu could not even think about reaching a peace deal of trading land for peace because the Israel, Our Home party, just said, no, we're not doing it. You do that and we're out of your coalition and your government comes toppling down. So Netanyahu apparently is wanting to try to negotiate a peace deal because international pressure is just mounting. I mean, the Paris Initiative, they had a meeting of 29 foreign ministers in Paris on June the 3rd, and they're pushing toward an agreement. They believe that if a 2-state solution is not reached very soon, it's going to be forever too late. In the meantime, the United States is pounding away. There must be a 2-state solution. Nearly the whole world is against little Israel over there on the Mediterranean Sea, pressuring Israel to divide what little land she has. And what land she has is about 50 miles wide and maybe 200 miles long. And that's at the widest point right now. So it's a very small country, less than half the size of the state of Indiana already. And now to give up a good chunk of that, well, it would leave Israel about 9 miles wide at the waist. Can you imagine a country 9 miles across? You can drive it in 9 minutes or less. Jet airplane, you can fly over it in a minute or less. So it's a very small country, especially if they would give away land for peace like they're being pressured to do from every single side. However, Netanyahu is no babe in the woods. He's been in politics a long time. He's held a lot of different positions. He's been ambassador for Israel to the United Nations. He came to America for his education. He's been the finance minister of Israel. He's been the foreign minister of Israel. He's been the prime minister of Israel twice now. So when we look at all this, he knows what's going on. And he realizes that the walls are closing in on him. The international walls, the walls of the international community are closing in on him. So he's thinking, what do I do? And many of his own Israeli citizens are saying, look, we've got to divide because the Palestinians, their populations are growing. And when they reach a certain critical point, they'll be able to outvote us. So we're either going to have to then have a kingship and not have democracy, or else we're going to have to divide so that we have a Jewish state with a vast majority of that state with a Jewish population. We can't keep going like we're going. We're headed straight toward disaster. Well, he hears all these arguments. He sees all these things coming. And he himself stated that he thought he would be the prime minister that would finally conclude a peace deal with the Palestinians. It appears that he may sense that that time has come. And now this article comes along, and here's what Lieberman and Netanyahu are saying. I am committed to achieving peace with our neighbors, the Palestinians, and with all our neighbors, Netanyahu insisted, intimating that the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, which promises normalization with the Arab world in the event of peace with the Palestinians, could be the basis for a major regional peace move. Now, the Arab League got together back in 2002, and they said, if you'll go back to 67 borders, all of us will make peace with you and normalize relations with you. Well, the problem with that is Israel has to surrender Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, in order to go back to Palestinian borders, furthermore, to 67 borders. Furthermore, Israel would have to take 800,000 people presently living across that line and do something with them. Well, Netanyahu just simply cannot do that. They're not defensible borders, and all he would be doing would be giving all that away for a piece of paper. That's all. So here's what he's saying. He said, I'm ready to negotiate on the basis of the Arab Initiative. We are ready to negotiate with the Arab states on updating the initiative so that it reflects the dramatic changes that have taken place in our region since 2002, but preserves the agreed goal of 2 states for 2 peoples, he declared. Okay, so what's he saying? He's saying, look, I'm willing to use that as a basis for negotiation. However, there's been a lot of changes. I mean, 2002, there may have been 150,000 Jews living out there in the territory that would become the new Palestinian state. Today, 800,000. It's a dramatic difference. So he says, we're ready to negotiate, but we've got to take into account the developed events since 2002. I mean, after all, this is 2016. That's 14 years. And there's a lot going on in Israel. After all, Israel is only 60 some years of age now. So we've gone from zero to a thriving, powerful nation in a little over 60 years. This has been very fast growth. And to try to wind back the clock to 2002, we can't do it. Now, let's stop a moment. What has brought us to this present situation? Israel and the Palestinians went to the table back in 2013 and negotiated for 9 months until 2014. John Kerry gave it all he had. Barack Obama hoped to reach a peace deal. However, it ended up falling apart. The talks failed. The Palestinians pulled out of the talks and made an agreement to form a unity government with Hamas, which is a recognized terrorist organization. Well, everything fell flat, and it's been that way ever since. Well, in the meantime, Mahmoud Abbas went to the United Nations, and he got the UN General Assembly to vote that the Palestinians would be admitted as a non-member state, to recognize the statehood of Palestine as a non-member state, even though they don't even have any recognized borders now. But the UN is so pro-Palestinian that they voted that way, which opened the door to them become members of the International Criminal Court, of many other international organizations. So the Palestinians are moving in. Well, in the meantime, there were efforts to revive the talks, but to no avail. The conclusion was reached by most of the international community that the Palestinians and the Israelis could never come together, because what the Palestinians demanded, the Israelis were unwilling to give, and what the Israelis were willing to give, the Palestinians were unwilling to accept. So it was at an impasse. On that scenario, the French decided to launch their own peace initiative. And they said, we want to bring the nations of the world together to agree on what the peace should look like. So they met together. The first step was this meeting on June the 3rd of 29 foreign ministers. John Kerry went there. And he ran interference for Israel. They really would like to have reached an agreement and say, you should do this, this, this. Here's where the border should be. This is what should happen to Jerusalem. This is what should happen about the refugees. They didn't do all that. They merely said, the Palestinians need to quit inciting against Israel, and Israel needs to quit building the settlements. And then they said, we want to convene an international peace conference later on this year with the Palestinians and the Israeli president and see if we can't come to an agreement as to what a peace agreement would look like. Well, Netanyahu knows what this is going to be. It's going to be pro-Arab. Now, Abbas doesn't want to go to the peace table with the Israelis because he knows they're not going to accept what he demands, but he believes he will get from the international community what he cannot get from Israel. That's the reason Abbas is not interested in renewing the peace talks anymore. However, the U.S. has not been willing to cooperate in forcing Israel to do what the Palestinians say. The U.S. is not willing to do that, even though President Obama probably would be willing to do it, but it would cause a major uprising in the House and the Senate, and I think it could even result in his impeachment if he tried it. Okay, so they met together. They came out of the meeting with a very watered down statement, but the French didn't give up. They said, we still want to have this international conference. Well, in the meantime, Netanyahu is looking for a way out of this pressure cooker that he's been placed in. So he's talking to al-Sisi, the president of Egypt, and al-Sisi wants to launch an effort between him and Saudi Arabia and others who are against Iran to launch a peace agreement. And they have a lot of leverage on the Palestinians because Egypt controls the southern border of the Palestinian territory. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia is one of the big money sources in the Middle East, and others. The Palestinians, if they cut all their money off, the Palestinian Authority would collapse. So consequently, al-Sisi has a lot of ability. And so Netanyahu says, look, I'd rather talk to him and get him to pressure the Palestinians to make some concessions that the international community is not willing to pressure Abbas to do. Okay, now, let me read to you some more of this article. Netanyahu said, I think al-Sisi made a very important speech which creates a genuine opportunity, and we must try to take up the challenge. The next day, at the induction ceremony of Lieberman at the Defense Ministry in Tel Aviv, he went further, deliberately using religious Jewish settler terminology. He argued that in the event of a clash between the integrity of the land, now pause right there because I got to explain this term. The integrity of the land, that means the promised land as defined in the Bible, which many Jews say, sorry, no negotiation, that's the promised land. And if we surrender that land, that means we don't believe the Bible gives us a right to be here. That means we don't even have a right to be in Jerusalem. Now, Lieberman is trying to straddle this fence. He's saying if we have to decide between the integrity of the land and the unity of the people, the unity of the people takes precedence because Israel is very divided today. Half of Israel wants to trade land for peace. The other half does not. So now Lieberman's saying this is ripping us apart. And if we're going to choose between keeping the land, the promised land altogether, or keeping the people together, the integrity of the people must take precedence, implying that land can and should be surrendered for peace. Now, let me tell you, they're talking seriously about these events in Israel today. And we need to realize, in fact, what is really going on. Okay, now we're going to continue on after our break, but right now I want to pause for a moment. Once again, for those of you that joined us late, we reached our goal for our emergency drive last week. Y'all were fabulous. Thank you so much. The orders have already been placed for the air conditioners. The arrangements are being made to install them. I cannot tell you how important that was to us. So thank you so very much. And God willing, oh, by the way, we're having hail guards on the new air conditioners. I didn't even know they made them until we had this huge hailstorm, and I didn't know they were ever needed. Well, we found out. Anyway, 18-year-old air conditioners are going out the window, and new units, more efficient units, will be installed. And we believe that this system will take us all the way to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So you have just helped us in such a huge way. We thank you. Let me say to all of you out there, though, we also need to continue to increase the reach of our ministry, and we do that by monthly partners. If you are not a monthly partner yet, please consider becoming one, because every person that signs on with us for $10, $25 a month, whatever it is, that strengthens us, our ministry, and allows us to go forward. To become a partner, 800 Endtime is the number. What an incredibly important subject we have today. Islam in Bible prophecy. It hasn't been many years since those planes flew into the trade towers in New York City, and suddenly the attention of the world was riveted on this religion, Islam, that very few of us knew very much about. But if you had to guess the religion of a suicide bomber, what religion would you guess? Now, could this religion, this huge religion, be totally absent from the prophecies of the Bible? We're going to find out today. It's not true. Islam is in your Bible.
To order our DVDs, Islam in Bible Prophecy and Will Islam Rule the World? Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com.
Ever wish that there was a newspaper that just reported articles that related to Bible prophecy? Well, Endtime.com has just that. We have stories fresh off the press that you can get on the Prophecy in the News page. Reporting daily, we make sure that you know the latest that is going on in Bible prophecy. You can also join the conversation, discussing articles with others, and asking questions about the news stories to our staff. We've got extra, and you can read all about it by going to endtime.com, and on the homepage you'll find Prophecy in the News.
If your radio station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the Watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the Archives button.
Once again, thanks to all of you that made our emergency week a success. It's all in, all done. Thank you very much. However, of course, our monthly operating expenses continue, and so if you can become a monthly partner with us, that's what helps us so tremendously. Television time, radio time, all the operational bills, all the staff that we have here that make all this possible. Well, that's what a small monthly partnership will enable us to continue to do. So if you're not a partner, please become one if you possibly can. No matter how small amount it is or how large, every bid helps. To do that, call 1-800-ENDTIME, or you can also do it at our website, endtime.com. Thank you all so very much. You're tremendous. You're wonderful. That's all I can say. I thank God for each of you. Let me tell you, we need to stay together because we're in the end time right now. And we're talking today about one of the two greatest prophetic fulfillments just ahead. And these two prophetic fulfillments, either one of them happening, will be the greatest prophetic fulfillment since the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The greatest prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years. That's how great this whole thing really is. So that's the reason I'm talking about it. And I know I talk about this quite a bit, but it's coming as sure as the sun comes up in the morning and goes down at night. This peace agreement between Israelis and Palestinians, they've not been able to get it since the founding of the nation of Israel on May the 14th of 1948. Haven't got the peace agreement yet, but they're still going to get it. The Bible prophesies they will get a peace agreement. It will be an interim agreement, not a permanent agreement, but it will be an interim agreement, and this agreement is going to trigger the final 7 years to Armageddon. Well, over the weekend, the news is absolutely filled. I think I have at least 10 major articles pertaining to the latest breaking developments toward this peace agreement. And I'm only going to get to one or at the most 1.5 of those today. But I do want to continue on because I want you to see what's going on. Israeli officials insist that these statements about the two-state solution should be taken seriously. They were not made in a vacuum, they say, but as part of a major regional peace push led by Sisi, that's the president of Egypt, and former quartet Middle East envoy Tony Blair. Now, the quartet consists of the United States, the European Union, the United Nations, and Russia. They are all working together on all of this right now with Tony Blair. The idea is to convene a regional conference in Cairo to kickstart Israeli-Palestinian peace talks with a regional dimension that could help the Palestinians be more flexible on sensitive issues like Jerusalem and refugees, and offer Israel the glittering prize of peace and normalization with virtually the entire Arab world if the talks with the Palestinians succeed. Okay, now get this picture. You've got the French pushing for an international conference, which Netanyahu is against and does not want to go to. And then you've got Egypt down here, an Arab country, pushing for a regional conference. And Netanyahu is more inclined to deal with him rather than with the French, because the European Union has not been a friend to Israel. And of course, now that we know where the Antichrist is going to come from, it doesn't surprise us, the animosity that continually comes out of Europe toward Israel. We know the Antichrist is going to come from Europe. Okay, so with all this coming together, and I'm talking about right now, let me tell you what happened next. Netanyahu then phoned Sisi to tell him that Lieberman was more than ready to go along. Now, Lieberman's the defense minister of Israel, so he's very powerful. He's more ready to go along, Netanyahu tells Sisi, and would take the same clear two-state line that Herzog would have done if he had joined the government. Now, it goes on to talk about Netanyahu. In the 7 years since he committed himself to the two-state solution in his June 2009 Bar Ilan speech, according to this article, no lasting progress has been made despite successive American attempts to mediate. Netanyahu has launched no initiatives of his own, and there are no telltale signs on the ground. Now, this article is very twisted and biased against Israel and for the Palestinians, because Netanyahu back in 2013 put a 10-month hold on building. Obama asked him, don't build anything for the next 10 months. Netanyahu agreed. And all that 10 months, Obama tried to get Abbas to the peace table. One excuse after another, after another. Nothing worked. 1 week before the 10 months was up, Abbas comes rushing to the table, sat down and said, "We're here now." And so they started talking, and he, of course, asked Netanyahu, "Don't start building again." Netanyahu said, "No, wait, I told you I would wait 10 months. And you wasted the whole 10 months. I'm not going to wait any longer. I don't trust you." So consequently, when the article states that Netanyahu has given nothing, what it really says is Netanyahu has not been willing to give Abbas and the Palestinians everything that they want. That's what it really means. Because Abbas is saying we must go back to 67 borders, and the UN resolution clearly states that Israel does not have to go back to 67 borders. The UN resolution states that there should be a peace negotiated between the two parties with mutually agreed borders. They recognized that the borders that Israel was within at that time were not defensible, and therefore the borders had to be redrawn, and that's what Netanyahu is saying. But Abbas continually says over and over and over again, we must go back to 67 borders, which no UN resolution has ever stated. Okay. Now, talking about some of the things that Netanyahu has done negatively, this article states in 2005, he resigned as finance minister over the Gaza disengagement. Now, that's when Ariel Sharon withdrew from Gaza unilaterally, picked 9,000 Jews up, kicking and screaming, hauled them away from their homes of 40 and 50 years, thinking he could purchase goodwill from the Palestinians. Well, what happened? Within a week or two, the Palestinians, Hamas, had moved its guns up and started bombarding Israel from the places where Israelis had lived for the last 40 or 50 years. So when Netanyahu resigned over it, he has been proven right. Almost everybody agrees that Sharon's move to unilaterally withdraw, for which he got nothing but terrorism in return, was a bad move. So yes, it is true that Netanyahu opposed that, and he was right. The article goes on to say, since his Bar Ilan speech, where he recognized the two-state solution, or came down on the side of the two-state solution, his tactic has been to proclaim support for the two-state solution, but to set impossible conditions for its achievement. Now let's pause a moment. What are these impossible conditions that the article states? They don't say. It may be that he refuses to redivide Jerusalem. Or it may mean that he says all the Arabs that have ever lived here in the present borders of Israel cannot come back and reclaim homes that they left here 60 years ago when they made war on us and forced us to defend ourselves. I mean, back in 1948, Israel accepted the borders as defined by the United Nations, but 5 Arab nations attacked them. The day after they declared their independence, 5 Arab nations attacked them the very next day, and they had to fight to defend themselves. Well, when the ceasefire was declared in 1949, the borders were drawn where the ceasefire was, but it specifically said in the ceasefire, these are not to be considered permanent borders. Well, the Palestinians at the time didn't want a state because the United Nations had offered them a state right beside Israel. If they would have accepted, it would have been peace right then. Instead, they said, no, we want to drive the Jews out. So the Jews defended themselves, and they gained some territory, not a lot, but they gained some territory, and that border became the border for the next 19 years. Well, then Egypt attacked them, Syria attacked them, Jordan attacked them, and when the dust cleared, now they control most of what was the biblical promised land as defined in the Bible. They now control Judea and Samaria all the way to the Jordan River. Well, anyway, so when they say impossible conditions, they don't bother to define, except they don't conform to what Mahmoud Abbas claims he has to have. Okay, continuing. In mid-2011, Prime Minister Netanyahu clashed publicly with U.S. President Barack Obama over the long agreed principle of borders based on 67 lines with land swap. Stop right there. It had never been agreed. This article is purposely deceptive. Never one time had even an American president dared to suggest Israel would withdraw to 67 borders. Not until Obama dropped that bomb in his speech. He said, we know that there has to be a peace agreement, and we know the form it will take. It's going to be along 67 borders with agreed on land swaps. That was never agreed by anyone, and it's never been stated by anyone, except, of course, the Palestinians. So when they say long agreed principles, that's a total deception. It's a total fabrication because it was never agreed upon. Now, the UN resolution calls for borders negotiated between the two parties that they would agree on, that they could give security to Israel while giving a state to the Palestinians. The article goes on. It states that Netanyahu repudiates the notion of a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem, insist on recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. Now think about this. Is this so bad? Israel as the capital of Jerusalem? Jerusalem is the capital of Israel? After all, Jerusalem's never been the capital of any other nation. It's been Israel's capital since 1000 BC. Why does this article express such outrage? Oh, they've got to have Jerusalem as their capital. Has it ever been the Palestinian capital? Not for 1 second, ever. I mean, after all, Jordan controlled East Jerusalem from 1949 until 1967. Did they ever create a Palestinian state? And did they ever declare East Jerusalem their capital? No. Why not? They were in control. Because they don't care about it. All they want to do is destroy the nation of Israel. When you hear Ahmadinejad and the other leaders of Iran saying, you're going to be wiped out, you're going to be driven to the sea, they mean that, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the ultimate goal. No matter what kind of an interim peace agreement is struck, that's still the ultimate goal. So the article goes on that Netanyahu is demanding an Israeli military presence in the West Bank after peace is achieved. And all of these conditions that Netanyahu sets forward, no Palestinian leadership is likely to accept. Well, if they don't accept it, then they can't have their state. That's the whole bottom line. Why did they say, look, it's this or nothing? And Israel says, if that's your conditions, then nothing. And so the international community presses Israel to conform to the Palestinian demands. And that's where we are right now. Well, okay, there's so much to this as I go on and on. I do want to take some of your calls today because so many things are happening in our world. So stay with us for the next segment. I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump to your calls in the next segment. Get ready to dial.
Many people are very concerned about the direction of our country, the United States of America. Some are predicting its demise. But we at Endtime Ministries are happy to announce that there is hope for the future of our nation we love so much. The United States and its special role in the future are specifically prophesied in the Bible. In our new DVD, America's God-Given Destiny, Irvin Baxter explains what the Bible says about the future of our nation and the role we are prophesied to fulfill in the end time. We have dedicated this new DVD to helping the Jewish people. As anti-Semitism is rising rapidly around the world, we want to help them get to safety in Israel. Go to endtime.com and under Irvin's Thoughts, click America's God-Given Destiny or call 1-800-ENDTIME to find out how you can be involved in this exciting project and receive our new DVD. Let's join together and bring revival to our nation by doing what God has called us to do.
So I guess the real question is, when we sort of boil all this down, I know there's a lot on the table here, but when you put all this together, what's going on? Is Netanyahu simply acting like he wants a peace deal? Is he just continually kicking the can down the road so he won't have to deal with it, because really he just wants the settlements to grow and grow and grow until a peace deal becomes absolutely impossible, until moving the settlers out becomes absolutely impossible? What is the case? Well, this article does stop a moment to consider the positive side from their perspective. On the positive side of the two-state ledger, Netanyahu is still keeping the foreign affairs portfolio open for Herzog, implying major historic moves and decisions in the offing. In other words, I'm holding that open for you. If you can join our coalition, we don't have to worry about the Israel, our home people, sabotaging the whole deal and collapsing the government. If you'll come on board. So he's keeping the foreign ministry, the foreign affairs portfolio open, and he's also keeping other important slots open so that people who favor the two-state solution could come into the government. It looks like to me that Netanyahu favors the agreement. Now, there's going to be an agreement. Here's what the conditions are going to end up being of the agreement. They're going to create a Palestinian state in the West Bank, the area called Judea Samaria. They're going to allow Jews who live there now to stay as a Jewish minority under the new Palestinian state, just like there are 1.6 million Arabs living in Israel. There will be Jews living in Palestine. So that will continue, according to the prophecies of the Bible. The Temple Mount, where there's so much dispute, will be placed under a sharing arrangement so that Jews, Arabs, and probably Christians as well can all worship on the Temple Mount. It'll be somewhat of an interfaith Mecca. But the one sticking point is going to be Jerusalem. Israel's not going to surrender to Jerusalem, again, according to the prophecies of the Bible. So they're going to make an interim agreement, leaving the issue of Jerusalem until later. Now, that's where we're headed. We're not too far from that right now. So we could very well see this peace agreement that's going to trigger the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. Now, before I go to the phones, let me just say to all of you out there, what are you doing to prepare? I know what we're doing here at Endtime Ministries. We're gearing up so that when the dam breaks on this greatest prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years, we're going to be able to strike fast and hard and reach this whole world with the message that they just entered the final 7 years to the second coming of Jesus. You say, I don't think you can say that. We can say it. You say, but nobody knows for sure when that's going to happen. That's not true. That's a myth that's been propagated by many people, but it's not true. Let me tell you what is true. Jesus said, when you see certain things, then know that the generation that sees these things shall not pass until everything is fulfilled. That's Matthew 24, verse 32 through 36. A lot of people say, oh, there's nothing you can see. There's nothing you can know for sure. We just sort of have to speculate. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Almighty God has put in our pathway a definite sign, not just one, several, I will tell you. But we're dealing with this one today. This is the one with a defined timeline on it, and they're working on it today. So if you're out there and maybe you're away from God and you're not really even walking with God, I urge you to make a decision. I need to get going now, because you don't need to be taking baby steps when this agreement's signed. You need to be fully acclimated. You need to be on the ground spiritually. You need to be growing up to be a spiritual adult. You don't want to be doing that when there's only 7 years left. We need to be in full battle gear. We need to be ready to do the business of the closing days of the kingdom of Almighty God. So if you're out there and you don't really know where you are with the Lord, I urge you, call us here at Endtime. Ask to speak to one of our ministers. What do you need to do? Those are all questions we need to ask. Well, I want to get the phones. Joseph is calling from Kentucky. Hello, Joseph. Welcome.
Yes, Brother Baxter. I wanted to ask you, is there any of the major news network in the United States saying anything about the what Obama has been trying to do to Israel in at the UN?
Well, we know that I didn't get to this point today, but there are many people who believe that President Obama, in the last few months of his term, might be willing to allow a resolution to pass the UN Security Council that would hem Israel in. And Israel's very concerned about that. He especially would be willing to do that after the elections. That way he wouldn't affect the Democratic nominee. And yet at the same time, those last 2 months, he still has the power to allow a resolution to go through. But there's nothing specifically that says what he's going to do, except in the bigger context of what's going to happen. A lot of the pressure from him and his administration has pushed Netanyahu to where he is right now, even though Netanyahu has resisted powerfully against it, yet little by little by little, it has taken its toll. So in that, to answer your question, no direct reference, but Barack Obama is fitting in perfectly. If there would be an agreement within the next few months, and if that it would be enshrined into international law by making it a UN Security Council resolution, which becomes binding upon the nations of the world, then Barack Obama would certainly play a big role if he would refrain from vetoing that. So that would play a huge role in this. But whether Barack Obama does that or not, or whether it waits for a little bit later time, I can't tell you that for sure. But it's very interesting where we're living right now. And that's some of the things they're discussing right now. They're discussing whether Obama, during the closing days of his presidency, would do what everybody knows he's been itching to do, and that's put Israel in a headlock and force Israel to do what he thinks Israel should do. So only to that extent does it refer to Barack Obama, in my opinion. Okay.
I wanted to comment on Barack Obama and other things, but I guess you don't have the time. So, I guess I may be able to call tomorrow if you don't mind.
Okay. Do that, Joseph. Appreciate it very much. Let's get right back to the phones. David's calling from Texas. Hello, David.
Hello, Irving. Irving, congratulations on getting that air conditioning thing from the Lord's gift to y'all, because y'all have a fine ministry there, and we all want to be in support of it through His Spirit.
Well, we sure appreciate it, David, and I'm telling you, it overwhelms me sometimes. Sometimes when you're talking in this microphone, you wonder how many people are out there listening. Then when you come forward with a real specific need, you find out what wonderful people are out there. So I'm overwhelmed with gratitude today for the wonderful generosity of all of our listeners.
All of us need to make a request and petitions unto the Lord and not be reluctant to do so, because He will work in our lives if we'll humble ourselves and do that much for ourselves. Let Him know. Ask and He shall give, But anyway, What other thing I wanted to say today was about the peace agreement. I still read the verses where it says, and I don't know when World War III is going to happen, but it's going to happen before the last 3.5 years. And if the peace agreement comes and we get that done first, we have that verse in the Bible that says, yes, they'll be yelling peace, 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 but the Bible goes on to say, but there will be no peace, for sudden destruction to come upon them, which leads me to believe that maybe World War III will be after the peace agreement, because that verse is in the Bible and we can't deny it. It will come true.
Yeah, so, let me make sure everyone understands what you're saying, David. You're quoting the scripture that says that people will say peace, peace, when there is no peace. And when they say peace and safety, utter destruction will come upon them as travail comes upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Well, that could well apply if, in fact, the peace agreement is signed and then this war would come. That could well apply. On the other hand, that same statement could also apply to them saying peace during the final 7 years and that peace melting down into the Battle of Armageddon. So we can't build, in my opinion, a total conclusion on that particular prophecy. But I do think you make a good point. We're going to have to wait and see. I have said repeatedly on this program, I cannot tell you for certain whether the war that is prophesied in the Bible happens before the agreement after the agreement. However, when I look at all these articles coming at me that looks like they're pushing towards this peace agreement right now, I'm thinking, Lord, we're fighting along the Euphrates River. Russia's on one side, we're on the other. We almost had a clash of airplanes over the weekend. And so there's a lot of potential there for this war to break out of the Euphrates. Hezbollah now is fighting along the Euphrates. This is a brand new development. So when you see all these developments, you can see it looks like the Euphrates River War is already in progress, but it just hasn't come to its full fruition yet. So we live in interesting times, David.
Amen. Thank you, Irving.
Hey, thank you very much. Okay. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when I talk about all this, it almost makes my hair stand on end. I've been living with this for 50 years, but I didn't understand it 50 years ago like I do now. I mean, now I can list for you what's going to happen between where we are right now and the Battle of Armageddon. I can go right down the line because the prophecies are crystal clear. Now, the times just ahead are going to be the best of times and the worst of times. If you're not aligned with Jesus Christ, it'll be the worst of times. The Bible teaches during the times just ahead, the Antichrist is going to arise. A world governmental system is going to be put in place. A war is going to happen that will kill 1/3 of the human race. At the same time, the Bible also prophesies that right in the middle of all this, that there's going to be great revival taking place. The Bible says all of Israel shall be saved. The scripture also says in Revelation chapter number 7, verse 9, that John saw a great multitude out of every kindred, every tongue, every nation, every people. A great multitude that no man could number. And the agent from heaven said to him, "What are these?" And John said, "I don't know. You tell me. I don't know what they are." He said, "These are they that have come out of great tribulation. They've washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb." So the Bible says there's going to be a multitude no man can number come to the Lord during the great tribulation. These are they that have come out of great tribulation, washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So we live in wonderful times, interesting times. And that's the reason we're on the air every day here talking to you about it, because we don't need to be going to sleep at the wheel. When the final 7 years breaks, it's going to revolutionize everything we do, especially those of us who truly believe in the prophecies of the Bible. Let me say once again, we're gearing up for the plunge to the rapture. That's what we're doing here at Endtime. We're trying to get ready to be able to reach the world on a daily basis here at Endtime Ministries. In order for us to accomplish that goal, we need the strength of our partners and more increasing partners. If you're not yet a partner with Endtime Ministries, I urge you to do that. You'll never miss it. You'll never miss it. God will supply it over and over again. Just call our operators right now, 1-800-ENDTIME. Tell them what you would like to do. We'd wonderfully love to welcome you on board. We've got a wonderful future ahead of us. One more time, that number is 1-800-363-8463.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.